Hello and welcome to Connotation Points Video Snark. I'm making my way through Born at Midnight by C.C. Hunter. If you haven't seen the other videos, you might want to do that before jumping into this one, or else you might be confused. Links will be posted below. Chapter 16. Before the men in suits can get to Kylie, one of them gets a call and they both turn away and leave. Kylie asks Miranda who they were, but Miranda only seems to think that Kylie's interest in them can only be romantic. When she does go on to explain, they're from FRU, or Fallen Research Unit. She says that Fallen was the town that they passed when they were driving up to the camp, and that the FRU is a branch of the FBI that deals with supernaturals. She continues on and says that a lot of bigot supernaturals don't believe in a mixing of the races, and oh boy, this seems like a loaded topic, but we'll see where it goes, if anywhere. And then Miranda is legit surprised when Kylie turns out not to know anything, which, considering that she just learned about any of this yesterday, I'm just scratching my head along with Kylie. How could she have known about any of this? To sum up, vampires versus werewolves equals the American Civil War, and nope, not going to touch that. Black Plague, caused by witches trying to wipe out fairies. Which, whatever, at least it's not racially charged like rewriting about the American Civil War. Ugh. Miranda wraps up by explaining that, have you ever heard about people missing on TV, or about gang violence? Most of that is supernatural in origin. Finally, they move on. Miranda explains about this to get to know you thing that they'll be doing, where half of the camp writes their name on a piece of paper and then you spend an hour with whoever draws your name. Kylie feels like her bad luck is going to pair her up with Perry. After Kylie eats breakfast, we get an update on Sarah. She slipped out early to get a pregnancy test, but at the store, Sarah had run into a friend of her mother's, so now she was back at square one with not knowing if she was pregnant or not. They talk for a moment longer before Kylie hangs up and her mom calls. Kylie still has no idea how to bring up everything to her mom. Her mom asks if Kylie's spoken with her dad, but Kylie lies and says that she hasn't had time to call him back. The mom then asks Kylie to find out when the dad will be coming for Parents' Week because she'll go whenever he isn't there. Kylie then brings up how hard that this has been on her, since Miss Mom brings up how hard that this has been for Miss Mom. Like, I get that you just need to get out of a toxic relationship, but geez, this relationship doesn't just include you and your husband at this point. Kylie quickly says goodbye as Della wanders over. They briefly talk about food, and Della says that you get used to things. She then asks how long Kylie's parents have been apart, but quickly apologizes for having eavesdropped accidentally. Della then suddenly remembers why she'd gone over to talk to Kylie in the first place. They'd already drawn names, and some kid named Brian drew Kylie's name, but Derek was upset upon finding somebody else drew the girl that he liked, so he asked Brian to swap. Kylie begs Della to say that Derek didn't pay money to switch names, but Della taunts that Derek promised blood, which is somehow more upsetting to Kylie than if he'd used money instead. Chapter 17. Derek comes over to Kylie and says that he drew her name and then tries to convince her to take a short hike on a path he found earlier. Kylie, however, is upset over what he did to get her name. However, as I'm thinking about his actions, she's upset that he would exchange an hour for her for blood, but not the general creepy factor of him doing it at all, full stop. Like, I feel like the blood is frosting on this poop cake. Derek insists that the deal is done, and even though he hasn't given the blood yet, he still can't undo it. He keeps bringing them back to the point of hanging out together, and it's like, right there, giant red flag. It is so creepy. Something about his voice seemed to reach deep inside her and scramble her thoughts, or perhaps it was how his breath whispered against her jawline at the soft, sweet tickle right below her ear that made it impossible to think, impossible to tell him no. Okay, but even as she cratered to his wishes, she told herself she had to be careful. Derek, for whatever reasons, had some kind of power over her, and that could be dangerous. Yup. Creeper alert. They go on the trail, where they eventually come to a little river where they sit down. Kylie is worried about getting some sort of poison ivy rash from this because her luck has been really awful recently. Derek continues to refuse to talk about what he did. He instead says that he noticed her when her mom dropped her off. He can't read minds, but he says that he can read basic emotions and that she seems so sad. Kylie then admits that Derek reminds her of her ex, but refuses to say why the two of them had broken up. Probably because that's insanely personal and a little weird for a guy that she's known all of about 24 hours now to be asking stuff like this. She asks him about being half fairy, and he says that considering how much she's avoiding his own questions, she sure is asking a lot. So they make a deal to exchange information. She then starts to cry. She tells him that she doesn't know what she is and feels like everything is just wrong with her life recently. He holds her and then says that he doesn't mind it when she cries against him. However, now that Kylie's finished telling her story, Derek refuses to tell Kylie anything, which sounds really suspicious if you ask me. He says that there's something that she hasn't told him, but Kylie insists that the stuff between her and Trey is just too personal. But then he asks what's going on between her and the werewolf. Okay, so they haven't even been at camp for a full 24 hours now. I think that she's had 2 moments with Lucas, first after Chan left the girls in the woods, and then when Kylie collapsed. But both times, there were more than enough people around to prevent any sort of anything. Mainly, I think that what it boils down to is Derek acting possessive of Kylie, trading for her name, demanding to know why she and Trey broke up, demanding to know what's going on between her and Lucas. I hope that this goes without saying, but to anybody listening out there, this isn't romantic, it's creepy. This is like the prelude to being locked in a guy's basement. Although, the upside is that Kylie doesn't seem to be buying any of this. For now. Chapter 18. Kylie says that she doesn't know what Derek is talking about, but because he can read her emotions, he can feel her emotions spiking whenever she looks at Lucas. However, he has a hard time telling passion and fear apart, which are two really different emotions, so why? But whatever. Normal people aren't that afraid of a perfect stranger. She explains that Lucas was her neighbor when they were little, but she didn't know about the werewolf thing until just now. Derek wants to ask more questions, but Kylie insists that she's answered enough. He says that his dad was a fae in the relationship, but left when Derek was 8, and even before that, it didn't exactly seem like he was getting any world's best dad mugs. He talks about how it crushed his mom, but Kylie can read his face and knows that he's still dealing with the emotional fallout from all of that too. He continues on and says that although he's been able to read people all his life, it's only in the past year or so when his ability to read people's emotions suddenly got super powerful. Kylie then has a sudden urge to kiss him, which, I don't know, man. Dirk is still being kind of creepy, and how do we know that reading emotions isn't the only thing that he can do? He asks if he really looks like Kylie's ass, and she says enough like him. But before she can kiss him, she jumps off the rock that they were sitting on. Derek screams at her not to move, and she thinks that he's talking in a threatening way, but then a huge, highly poisonous snake appears. Oh no. Derek tells her that the snake is only just passing through. He grabs her hand from his seat on the rock, and she has this weird, unnatural calm wash over her. She knows that it's wrong because she should be having a panic attack over the snake, but she's not. She's just kind of weirdly hyper-focused on the movement of the snake near her shoes. When the snake vanishes around the other side of the rock, Derek removes his hand from Kylie, and then all of the panic crashes into her and she starts screaming her head off and climbs back up onto the rock, because that's helpful in this situation right now, after the snake has already gone. Derek holds Kylie and reassures her that she's okay now, and even after experiencing firsthand what Derek can do with other people's emotions, she still leans in to kiss him, because, Just then, somebody comes out to cork-blork Derek and demands that he release Kylie, because we're a little less than halfway through the first book of a trilogy. We can't be having happy kissy times right now. Thanks for listening to my book Snark on YouTube. If you enjoy my videos, please hit that subscribe button. I post a new Snark video every Monday. Don't forget to check out my other videos, Snark of Stalking Jack the Ripper and The Plan. If you've already seen those, then you can head over to Tumblr for my main book Snarks, and if all of that is somehow still not enough for you, then you can become my Patreon supporter for just $1 a month and read a bunch of bonus Snarks that aren't up anywhere else. See you next week, guys.